Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. I'm your host, James Anderson, brought to you today by Fantrax. And we're going to be talking the Tout Wars draft and hold here. I got my friend Chris Clegg from Dynasty Dugout. And Chris is the reigning champion of the 15-team Tout Wars draft and hold league, 50-round OBP, standard 5x5, other than the OBP part. And this is a league I've been in since its inception, I think maybe 6 or so years now. I've finished top third every year. I finished top three at least half the time. I still haven't won it. And I thought it was a fun finish last year. I know, not everyone's into these sort of industry leagues, but when I first came up, I thought Tout Wars and Labor were just a really cool way to sort of follow along with the people you're listening to on podcasts. And these drafts typically happen early enough that they're happening before your home league, so you can kind of see how the people that you follow are valuing players. And I thought this league specifically was really cool last year because it's the 50-round draft and hold league, kind of lends itself to prospect analysts. And you and I were just really battling it out over the final couple months. I think we both finished up in the 120 plus point area. You ran me down, but I thought that was really fun. Just two prospect guys going at it in this league last year. So, Chris, how's it feel to be Tout Wars draft and hold defending champion? And how did you think this effort went to defend your title?
Yeah, so obviously it felt pretty good, and I didn't think I was going to win, as you kind of referred to. Like you had a pretty solid lead, and then we got to September last year, and I don't know, my team just kicked it into fifth gear and just really went going, and so it was a fun finish for sure. And yeah, this year was interesting because when we pick our draft slots, basically you pick it in the order of how you finished last year, and so us finishing 1-2, we got to pick first and second. We obviously chose the first two picks. And part of me didn't want to pick first, even though getting Ohtani is obviously, a great spot to be. But, you can miss runs and you can also start runs. And I tried to do that in several spots. But yeah, I feel like the team overall shaped up pretty good. I felt good about the draft. We went back and forth. I think you mentioned that I sniped you a few times. You sniped me a good bit as well. So it certainly made for a fun draft. And you kind of never really knew what would be there coming back to us at those turns. And so it made for some interesting kind of like waiting it out to see if, you would get your guys or not. But yeah, overall, like I felt pretty good at spots. I think there's one pick that we'll talk about that, it could be a potential downfall kind of early, but we'll chat about that. And yeah, it's certainly fun picking next to you and going back and forth on some guys.
Yeah, we'll get to plenty of prospect talk. Chris sniped me a bunch on some guys. I know I got him at least on one prospect. So that'll be fun to talk about. I'm sharing the draft board for those not watching on YouTube. You can use YouTube 15 for 15% off a RotoWire subscription, but currently sharing roughly the first 20 rounds or so. If you're watching on YouTube, Chris's team is the team on the far left picking first. I'm the team right next to him picking second there. And Chris, right away, you messed up my plans. I took Zach Neto at 29, thinking that Hunter Brown was slightly more likely to come back to me at 32. Then you grabbed closer Edwin Diaz, and you took Hunter Brown there to pair with Shohei Ohtani. So what was your thought process at the time, at the turn? You grab Edwin Diaz as the first closer off the board. Obviously, draft and hold, who knows which closer is going to be there coming back. And then you chose Hunter Brown over, Brian Wu, Logan Gilbert, Chris Sale, among others.
Yeah. So that was a tough spot to wait on because you kind of see a tear drop off. And Neto is certainly somebody I had my eye on there. Just shortstop is kind of interesting this year, I think. And there's certainly tiers of it. And Neto was one I would have taken if available. And then the closers, like you mentioned, some people may look at it and say it's crazy to take a closer 30th overall. But then again, like not picking for 30 more picks, like who are you going to get? And we kind of saw that play out as you took Mason Miller, and then there are quite a few closers that went off the board in rounds 3 and 4. So, I felt pretty good starting kind of that run, and that's what you have to do at the turn. And so the starting pitcher was interesting because I did debate kind of waiting on that spot. And I think in a typical case, like I wanted to get a shortstop. Obviously, Lindor's injury kind of affected that a little bit, where I didn't want to take him at that turn. So then I look at starting pitcher, and Brian Wu had some injury scares last year. Logan Gilbert as well. And I think that Gilbert is probably the one that I feel like is potentially the most talented of the group that you mentioned. Obviously Sale as well, but just the injury risk that they present. And Hunter Brown's just kind of been a workhorse. Like, we know what we're going to get out of him. He turned in a great season last year. We saw the strikeouts tick up again, which is good. And obviously, he's not going to give you the strikeouts that some of those other guys you mentioned, like Wu or Sale or Gilbert even would. But I think that there's enough there with Hunter Brown where he's going to give you the innings, you're going to get the ratios, and he's going to give you enough strikeouts where I feel like it's a pretty good floor to build on, and you can kind of take some risk later on with some upside arms, is kind of what I did there.
Yeah, I think you explained that very well. That's sort of the appeal to Brown to me as well. I think, I mean, I might even rank him like fourth of those guys, Wu, Gilbert, Sale, just in terms of pure upside, if they just stay healthy the entire year. But I just think he's the most likely of the four to stay healthy the entire year. So
right.
Now you talked about shortstop. When we come back in the fourth round, you got the 4-5 turn at pick 60. You take Corey Seager there. Honestly, 50 rounds, this was probably the only pick you made that I second guessed or probably wouldn't have done. And it's just because of the games played, right? Obviously Seager can be a absolute monster in the 4 non-speed categories when he's in the lineup. Just a question of how many games you're getting there. So what was your thought process there at that turn? You also grabbed your SP2 with Logan Webb there.
Yeah, so that was kind of one of those turns that I was just kind of waiting out to kind of see who would be there. And then obviously the closer run happened. So when that happens, it kind of allows some players to fall. And Logan Webb was one of the players that felt like fell. He wasn't necessarily somebody I was going out of my way to target, but it felt like a good value at that spot. And just pairing him with Brown, you never know with arms, right? But it feels like that's a pretty good 1-2 floor of innings and ratios to kind of start the staff with, on top of Edwin Diaz. So 3 really good pitchers. The shortstop position, as I mentioned, I've really struggled with where do I target that this year? And if you don't get one of the elite guys early on, then what does it look like? And obviously in an OBP format like this is, so Seager does play up a little bit. Flip side, as you mentioned, you're not necessarily getting the plate appearances that you would like. And so looking at it, I knew that if I took Seager, I was going to have to certainly counteract it with some backups that could potentially fill that spot. And so Seager gives you the OBP floor that I was kind of looking for to build on. So Ohtani and Seager is a pretty good OBP start, and then kind of enables you to do some things later. Plus the power, which you see power disappear a little bit as the draft goes down. And I kind of began to notice that more and more. There were some gaps where I felt like I needed the power and it wasn't there. So you just hope that at this point, Seager gives you enough plate appearances to get 25 home runs, gives you a solid OBP floor, and then the runs, RBIs are going to come with it. It's certainly not a pick that I love, but it's one that I'm just hopeful he gives you enough where he can be in there the majority of the season. Obviously, we haven't been able to count on that in how many years now? Really ever. He's had, I think, one fully healthy season dating back to his early career. So it's tough. It's just kind of hope and pray that it works out. But yeah, it would be a pick that to go back and would I do it differently? Maybe. And there were certainly some guys like Freddie Freeman, somebody I considered there. But I just feel like what you could get more at first base later. And shortstop felt like it bottomed out a little bit more, even though, Seager certainly has the floor risk with him.
Yeah, hearing you describe it, it sort of sounds like you just really didn't want to feel weak at shortstop.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're at the turn, it's who, so Mookie Betts goes, Perdomo goes before it gets back to you. So, I mean, yeah, you would have been on to sort of the Willie Adames. Adames probably would have been like a nice fallback option to me, but, you don't know if he's going to be there at your spot either. So now there were several times throughout this draft where you would snipe me and I would just kind of be like, well, if this ends up being good for Chris, it's still going to end up being good for me because I've got a lot of these players on other teams. That was certainly the case when you took Emmett Sheehan in the 9th round and when you took Abner Uribe in the 11th round. So Sheehan at 121 overall and Uribe at 151 overall. Are Sheehan and Uribe guys you've found yourself landing on this year, or was this just a case of them kind of falling into your lap?
Sheehan's definitely a big target. I think there's kind of been the questions of like, was he certainly locked in the Dodgers rotation? That seems just certain to me. Now, the innings, what do you like? How many innings do we get? Is he through like 70 some last year on top of the minor league games they threw? I think they kind of let him go. I think we're going to see him get, the innings that he needs. And then when you have the floor of, Webb and Brown, it felt pretty good to counteract that with a Sheehan for the upside play. And what he showed last year, I mean, he looks like he could ascend to be like an SP2 type arm. I mean, the stuff is incredible. We saw some gains last year in the command department, which was huge. The walk rate went down. He's striking out over 30% of guys. So those things were certainly encouraging to see from him. And I'm just somebody I'm really targeting. And Uribe, at that point, like only had one closer, really felt like I needed someone who I felt like could give me saves, but also really good ratios in Ks if he's not getting the saves. And I kind of believe that Uribe might just kind of earn that spot over time over Trevor McGill. I know McGill's got the role, and I know they always say kind of like draft for role. But if you look at the board, like at that point, there's no role guys that are certain other than kind of some dumpy guy. I mean, like Kenley Jansen, I debated, but not somebody that I was really wanting to get. And I just look at the upside with Uribe. Edwin Diaz is locked in a role. He's going to get saves, and he's going to kind of help you across the board. And I just think what we saw from Abner Uribe last year kind of shows that he's capable of overtaking that role if McGill does struggle a little bit. And, the Ks are going to be there. He's going to give you good ratios. And if he gets 15 saves, I think that'd be solid. But I think there's the upside for a lot more there. So, at that point in the draft, it was just like, okay, I got to take the upside swing to get some saves. And really, that was why I thought I was going to lose the league last year was saves. That was the only category I was pretty weak in. And so I wanted to make sure that I came away with a decent, C2 there. And Uribe kind of fit that bill.
Yeah, I think you and I, we'll cover my team in the second half of the pod, but you and I kind of both leaned into skills, maybe over roles with our second and third relievers, which I think that's how I'd rather play it, especially in like a standalone league like this, where it's more important to me to just kind of be top like half, like 8th, 7th, 6th in saves and like strong in ratios and strikeouts. Right. So we covered Sheehan in the 9th round there, Uribe in the 11th round for you. Then a few interesting players I wanted to throw a question to you on. Lawrence Butler in the 10th round, Addison Barger in the 12th round, and Andrew Abbott in the 14th round. So pick 150 on Butler, pick 180 on Barger, and 210 on Abbott. I feel like all three of those players have the potential to be going quite a bit higher next time we draft. And I'm curious, out of those three, Butler, Barger, and Abbott, who do you think is most likely to be getting drafted significantly higher next year?
I guess probably Butler. He did have you can call it a little bit of a down year last year. It wasn't super down. I mean, he hit 21 homers, sold 22 bags. And I know he plays a little bit down in the OBP format, but I felt like I had a good enough base where I can kind of get him there. And obviously he had off-season knee surgery. He's said to be fine. And I think that's why he fell a little bit. And I needed some speed at that point in the draft. So that was kind of the hope with taking him, is that he can have that 2020 season again. And, this time last year, Butler was getting taken much higher. So I think he's kind of the candidate that would be drafted higher last year. Abbott's interesting because, I kind of thought that he would fall off last year. Like, he kept just pitching well. I was like, okay, like he's going to fall off at some point. Just the skills don't really match the numbers that we're seeing from him. But he never did, and turned in a sub-3 ERA last year, built up to 166 innings. So, I think that if he shows it and repeats that, then all of a sudden, like, he's going much higher than 210 or wherever his ADP is, where I got him at 210. And I think that he's one of those cases where you're kind of fearful because of the ballpark that he pitches in Great American Ballpark, that things could go south like pretty quickly for him. But again, like, he has the skills, I think, that kind of can work in that ballpark. So we'll see. I do expect some regression. I don't expect him to pitch to that level again, but if he pitches to like a mid to high 3s ERA and gives you innings, I'm pretty happy with that pick overall. And Barger, like, he's probably on the strong side of a platoon, but he's going to give you power when he's in there. And I think that you can kind of get away with him being on that platoon, even though it's kind of an early pick, just given, he's going to give you some power for sure. And obviously a great team around him to give him some counting stats as well. But I think Butler would be the pick that, he could certainly rebound from, I say rebound. That's a loose term considering, 2020 season, but I think he could be in the top 100 next year.
Yeah. Most disappointing 2020 season in recent memory. For I think Butler and Barger are interesting just because, like, they're both kind of fighting that platoon battle. But like, if Butler's just like sort of fully healthy by opening day, and that knee issue is a thing of the past, like, I definitely see some positive regression coming for him. And I'm just curious how long this season Barger's in that platoon. Maybe it's all season, but if we get to the end of the year and he's more of an everyday player, I think he could be going quite a bit higher. And with Abbott, I think this is just a almost kind of a crossroads type of season for him, where I think he has a chance to prove that what he's doing just isn't going to be measurable by sort of the standard ways we measure pitchers. And like, he almost kind of like a Zach Gallen-y type of thing, where it just takes people a while to sort of buy in on how good he is. And like, if he repeats it, then I think he'll be going quite a bit higher, but it also could be regression coming his way. So interested to see how 2026 shakes out for Andrew Abbott there. So Chris, you didn't go early catcher or late catcher. You kind of played the middle. You got Gabriel Moreno at pick 181. You got Edgar Caro at 330. And then you went back and got kind of a premium third catcher in Joe Mack at 481. So was not using a premium pick on a catcher part of the plan, or was it just, byproduct of picking at the end and just the options that were available to you?
Yeah, the board didn't really fall in my favor for catchers. I would have loved a Will Smith in the fourth, but that didn't pan. And you take Langoliers, the pick before me, in the fourth round. So at that point, I think there's a little bit of a tier drop off. I'm not fully buying a Hunter Goodman repeat, and so I'm looking to tier down. Like, I think Adley would have been a target for me given the OBP format here. I do think that Adley stands a good chance to build back up some value this year. And again, the board didn't fall there in my favor of how I wanted it to. It just went a little earlier than I was comfortable with. And then at some point, like you said, like, the guys are just kind of flying off the board. And so by the 13th round, like, I knew I had to grab somebody. And so Gabriel Moreno was the first one in the 13th round. Now, he's interesting because I think he showed some things last year that I'm not going to say he's going to go like full breakout. I don't think that's the case, but I do think that he provides enough where I felt okay with it being the C1. I mean, he played half a season. We saw him hit a career high 9 home runs in that half a season. The OBP is consistently good with him. And even, I think this spring, like, you look at the surface numbers or like whatever, but some of the underlying stuff looks pretty decent on Moreno. So I think he could be in for a big year. So I felt okay at that spot with him. Really like I was hoping that Carter Jensen would come back around. Like that would have been my ideal C2. And then again, the board just didn't shake. And so I kept kind of sitting on it. And I debated several times of like, where do I go here? And then like several turns I sat there, I was like, should I take a Logan O'Hoppe, or does he like somehow completely lose this role? And so I was scared of things like that. Like his season was so bad last year, even though he did hit some homers, like the last however many months of the season were just horrifically bad for him. And then there's just guys that, just didn't feel great about taking, like a JT Real Muto, I like, and I wanted to take him at spots. And it's like, okay, like, I don't know, like another year older catcher, like we've seen some regression. And so the board just really didn't fall in my favor. And it was probably my fault, right? I'm playing chicken with some guys. Okay. Like I'd like them here, and they just didn't pan. So the C2 spot is pretty interesting. And that may be my weakness as catcher. Now, I feel good about Moreno. Caro is going to be interesting. Like what does he provide? And I think that as late as he went, like I did feel okay about the spot to get him. I mean, he was picked 330. That was 22nd round. Not the most ideal C2, I would say, but I do think the playing time is going to be there, and he's going to get some DH reps. It's interesting because like he only hit 5 home runs last year, and he had 403 plate appearances in the majors. It's like, okay, like what kind of profile are you? Because at one point, like he looked more like a power hitting type guy, and he's shown some really good contact skills as well. So I think the reps are going to be there for him. And, hopefully he's a guy that just can give you like 10 home runs and respectable counting stats. And then the rest of it's kind of like, let's hope that Joe Mack gets up early. Maybe a Jefferson Caro can come up and finally kind of become what people thought he could be, and just hope for the best. Cooper Ingle was certainly somebody I was looking at, and you got him, right before I was hoping to get him. You took him in the 43rd round. I thought that was a great end of game target at the catcher position. And so I just kind of floated and waited it out after that and just took Caro in the 46th. So yeah, it'll be interesting how that position really shakes out.
Yeah, I do. I'm really interested to see how Edgar Caro's season goes. We talk a lot about like Samuel Basayo and Carter Jensen as guys who are going to play a lot, even while sharing the roster with a catcher ahead of them. I don't think anyone is projecting quite as much playing time for Caro with Chicago as we are with like a Basayo or a Jensen. But I do think he's a very talented offensive player who might just be kind of scratching the surface. Like he obviously was pushed very aggressively dating back to his time with the Angels. So if you could just get him up into that sort of like 450, 500 plate appearance range, I think Edgar Caro would be very productive. It's just kind of a question of how much playing time's there for him.
That's right.
Okay, let's head to a quick message from our sponsor. When we come back, we'll talk a little Sal Stewart, who Chris Clegg got as his starting first baseman in his defense of his Tout Wars Draft and Hold crown. But first, Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Coming from another service, Fantrax makes it easy. Fantrax can import any of your current leagues and customize if needed. Fantrax offers the most in-depth player pool in the industry, including minor league players. Do you need a customizable commissioner service for your fantasy league? Fantrax offers more customization than any other platform. Waivers, categories, scoring system, schedule. Fantrax offers custom solutions for all that and more, and it's all free. Sign up for free today. Simply go to fantrax.com/RotoWire and sign up today. That's fantrax.com/RotoWire. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. All right, back with Chris Clegg here, and we are showing the Fantrax draft board for the Tout Wars Draft and Hold. If you're following along on YouTube, use YouTube 15 for 15% off your RotoWire subscription. Got a big update to the top 400 prospect rankings coming in under 2 weeks. Dynasty rankings will be updated in about 2 weeks, so subscribe to RotoWire YouTube 15. Back, though, with Chris Clegg. Sal Stewart at 211 is your starting first baseman. And let's move the board down a little bit here. So for those following along, Chris's team is the team on the far left picking first. My team is right next to him picking second there. So 15th round, Sal Stewart, Chris. I completely botched. You talked like at the beginning about just the game of like who's going to come back, that whole kind of waiting game when you're picking at the ends like this. And I just completely botched. I mistimed when I got in at first base. I took Jonathan Aranda in the 12th round, and projections like him a little bit more than Sal Stewart. I think they're basically a toss-up, and kind of regret not even just taking Sal Stewart over Aranda straight up at this point. But you get Sal Stewart 3 rounds later, and just the first baseman I thought would go after I took Aranda in the 12th. They just kind of lingered on the board for a couple rounds longer than I thought they would. So I botched my pick at first base, I thought, in the 12th round with Aranda, just based on how long comparable first basemen lasted after that. But what was your thought there with Stewart in the 15th round?
Yeah, the funny thing is I might have taken Aranda at that 12-13 turn if you hadn't. So we might have had switched guys if it.
We might have. Hey, yeah.
I was looking at Aranda. I do like Aranda a lot, especially in the OBP. He's the one that's interesting. Like, obviously they played at Steinbrenner last year. Like, so did the power play up a little bit there as, for him. But Stewart is somebody, man, I was kind of sweating it. Like, he was somebody that I wanted for sure. And after Aranda, or he took him and he went, like, he was certainly somebody I was hoping would come back to me. And then, like, surprisingly, like, there was Christian Walker was the only first baseman taken in the 13th or the 14th round. Mm-hmm. And man, I just, at that point, like, I couldn't pass up on Stewart, who I love. I mean, the power gains we saw last year, I believe, are real. And I think he's going to have a huge season. And it's a great ballpark. Like, I think it fits him well. He's shown good OBP skills his entire career. And I think he's going to hit in the middle of that lineup. And I know he's young. He just turned 22, and his spring has done nothing but give more confidence that he can be their everyday first baseman. And I think really just running with a job. So I think that 20 plus home runs is in order. That wouldn't shock me at all. And some pretty decent OBP numbers as well. So I just felt like at that point, like, he was a pretty good value. And honestly, I'm kind of like with you. I think that, like, he could return a decent bit of value at his ADP. It wouldn't shock me at all if he is somebody that returns top 100 value, honestly, this year. Just, the talent's there for sure. The ballpark, all those factors. And even though he's young, like, I think he's still going to get the reps. So it worked out pretty well. I was pretty happy with that pick of Sal Stewart there. So yeah, it was funny how that worked out, though, because Aranda was certainly on the target board.
Yeah, right. I'm not mad at, like, I'm sure Aranda's production is going to be great. It just kind of, 12th round Aranda versus 15th round Sal Stewart. Now, Mike Burrows at 270, another case of you just sort of staying a step ahead of me on the SP side. You got Hunter Brown. I was left with Jacob deGrom. You got Logan Webb. I was left with Uri Perez. You got Emmett Sheehan. I was left with Sonny Gray. Although I don't mind that trade-off there, but I settled for Shane Smith after you took Mike Burrows at 270. How excited are you for a full year of Burrows in Houston?
Yeah, I think that there's certainly some things to be excited about there. And he showed some good traits last year with the Pirates. And it was kind of one of those underrated, I think, MLB debuts that we saw. Well, he debuted, I guess, for a couple innings in 24. But then last year, pitched near 100 innings in the majors, was pretty productive and showed some good traits. And then you sent him over to Houston. And obviously, we've seen a lot of pitch dev success with Pittsburgh, but also the Astros have certainly had their success as well, and almost like him better there with the team around him. And what Burrows has shown this spring has been fantastic. And at that point of the board, as I'm looking at the other, I knew I needed another SP, had a pretty good base. And it's like, man, like, I don't know. I just feel like it's time to take a shot on Burrows. Like, looking at the ADP at the time, I think it may have jumped his ADP a little bit, but I was like, at that point in the draft, you almost just have to get your guys. And I think in this format, especially as you mentioned, like a standalone, we're not looking at like an overall contest. Like, just get the guys you really believe in and are buying into. And Burrows is kind of that guy that I'm buying to take the next step. Is he a huge breakout? I don't know that's the case, but I think that he's going to give you good ratios. I think the innings are going to be there. I think the strikeouts will be solid enough. Like if he's a 25% K guy, like I'm more than happy with that, with good ratios. And I think he's going to be, certainly the team context is better in Houston. So I'm pretty excited about Burrows. And, I'm kind of curious like where his March ADP lands, especially it's like main events and stuff happen like that. But I feel like it's a pretty good spot to take that chance at 270.
Yeah, absolutely. And this league, I love this draft because we're not all drafting off of like the NFBC ADP. Everyone's got their own values. We're using the Fantrax default ADP. So it really kind of makes it sort of more of the Wild West where you just don't know you really don't know which guys are going to come back if you pass on someone. So you do got to start getting your guys in that range. You took Reid Detmers at 331. You took Taj Bradley, 391. Mike Soroka, 421. Johan Oviedo, 450. So 4 sort of interesting, I don't know if you want to call them like breakout candidates, but guys that haven't like put it all together yet. So just, which of those 4 are you sort of most confident in taking the next step? Do you see like a big breakout coming from any of those 4, or was it just kind of, getting some arms that you felt decent about?
Yeah, I think that all those guys, minus Soroka, feel like they have some upside. Soroka kind of, more the floor play, maybe. You don't know what you're going to get out of him. But I also think that like Detmers has that breakout potential. The stuff is, off the charts, and obviously full-time reliever going back to starter. What do we get of him? And I'd certainly love for him to be traded. Like, I would love the Braves to trade for Detmers because they desperately need some arms. Like, that would be awesome. I'm not that's likely, but yeah, he'd probably blow out his arm, but everybody else has there. But yeah, I think that you just take some chances there, especially kind of with the base of arms that I had built out, having some of the floor arms where I felt like I was going to get good innings with like Brown, Webb, Abbott. And I feel like the Sheehan innings would be there as well. Had Ryan Weathers, Burrows up to that point. So I thought that those are the kind of the guys I just want to take a chance on and see where it goes. Like you mentioned, haven't put it together, but some of them could. And if I hit on 2 of them or even one of them really hits, I'd feel pretty good about that.
Now, Colt Emerson, you grabbed at 420. Seemed like, he was, I don't know how much you'd been eyeing up the shortstop prospects in this draft. Obviously, neither of us ended up with Connor Griffin or Kevin McGonigal or JJ Weatherholt. You jump in on Colt Emerson there. Obviously just really a joy to watch Colt Emerson hit, and he had a really remarkable finish to last year, especially when you factor in how young he was, climbing all the way up to AAA there, and the production kind of just kept ticking up. Sneaky speed even last year from Colt Emerson. So what's your analysis on sort of how 2026 unfolds for Colt?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting spot. And he was one that I really thought you were going to take him at some point. I was a little nervous about that. And, this situation like, JP Crawford at the time when we picked that, I don't think he had debuted yet in the spring. The injury was kind of looming and we knew he was going to come back. So it wasn't like we thought that Crawford was going to miss time. But the remarks from the Mariners had been very high on Emerson, and he's 20. So he's still young and he won't turn 21 until, the All-Star break. Do we see him early? That's the tough thing. I don't know. And so I thought that at that point, though, like you're getting towards the 450 range, like the end of a 30 team or a 30 round draft, 15 team. And I felt like this is a good, like, take a chance, because while you certainly want to take chances on prospects later, like Emerson's got the caliber where he's not going to last that much longer. And honestly, like I felt pretty decent about the value, especially like given what was on the board at shortstop, just what was left. And man, I wish I had a better answer of like, what does he give me? I'd love to say he'll be up in late May. Yeah. I don't think that's the case, but I would say if he comes up later, like mid-season, I'd be pretty happy just given the skills and what I think he can do, because while JP Crawford's fine, like, he's not going to block a Colt Emerson type player, I don't think.
Yeah. So if you want to like a little peel back the curtain, I probably would have taken Colt Emerson, except my my queue was sort of in shambles. I think I was traveling back from Arizona that day from labor, and I just didn't have time with like the travel day to really kind of shore up the queue, make sure everything was fully functional for that trip back. And so that was just operator error, me not grabbing Emerson in front of you. So hopefully that doesn't lead to too much success for you. But yeah, he's extremely talented. I think he spends, at least a few months up this year. So Zach Cole, 5'10", Alan Roden, 5'41", Brennen Davis, 6'91". Some fun stuff to be said about all three of these guys based on what they've done this spring. Any thoughts on Cole, Roden, Davis? I know we'd love for Davis to just stay healthy.
Right. Yeah, I mean, obviously that'd be great. Zach Cole had a pretty interesting finish as he came up last year. I know he's been pretty bad this spring so far, but yeah, I mean, the power speed potential as a later outfielder is interesting. Roden has had a great spring, as has Brennen Davis. And I think Roden actually stands a pretty decent chance with his new org in Minnesota, where he can probably get some reps. I know they obviously have plenty of outfielders, which does make the playing time situation a little murkier. But again, like these guys, I mean, Buxton, he's injured often. I mean, Larnach and Wallner are pretty inconsistent. I don't know. I just think that there could be a chance that Roden kind of breaks through and gets the shot. And while I know spring training is pretty meaningless as far as stats go, Brennen Davis has been on some kind of tear. I mean, he looks healthy and he's performing like he's healthy. And again, like I looked at the Mariners roster situation, and it's like, okay, like while he's not going to take a spot from J-Rod or Rosarena, like they've got Luke Raley, Dominic Canzon, but man, would it be crazy to think that healthy Brennen Davis couldn't find a spot, even though they have several outfielders, including, and they've got like a Ref Snyder and Victor Robles. But man, I don't know. Like I was pretty shocked that Davis, because at that point in the draft, like towards the end, 47th round, I was looking and I was pretty shocked that like he hadn't been taken really in any NFBC draft either. I was looking at like the recent ADP, and I don't know, like you're throwing darts at all those picks, really, like whether you're getting like some guys that have been on MLB rosters, prospects, whatever it is. I feel like they're all darts. And so I just threw some shots at guys like that. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it could work. If he gives you a few plate appearances, that'd be awesome, but not somebody I'm, counting on, but maybe it works out.
Well, yeah, I mean, Davis was definitely out of those three, Davis was the one you sniped me on, if you even want to say it that late. But, I looked at the same thing as you with just the depth chart, and, he was a monster last year too, before he got hurt again. Like he's just been an absolute power hitting machine for as long as he can stay healthy these last couple of years. So I think if he's healthy at AAA and they have like any kind of need, I think you might as well just like give him a shot before he gets hurt.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the Brennen Davis pick there. I mean, he's the exit velocities this spring have been pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
You grabbed Foster Griffin at pick 540, coming back over for the Nationals. Emerson Hancock at 570, velocities up, exciting. Quinn Mathews at 601, having a pretty good spring for the Cardinals. Hagen Smith at 661, a nice like post-hype sleeper potentially with the White Sox. Do you have a favorite of those, or a guy that you've been really kind of loading up on?
Man, honestly, like I was kind of hoping to get Ryan Weiss. He went in the earlier part of the 36th round. So at that point, I'm like, okay, like I need some more assured kind of innings. Not to say that anybody's assured at this point, but Griffin felt like he's in that Nats rotation, at least to begin the year. And so, who knows what we get out of him, but like, I felt like there was some innings there. And Hancock has shown some things this spring where I'm like, okay, like this is pretty intriguing. And I kind of sweated that one a little bit, because I think that if I recall right, that day that I picked him, he had started the day before and had a really good start. And there was kind of some hype on Twitter about some of the stuff and the arsenal. And so I was like, man, like he's going to go, and wound up coming back. And then you look at the prospects like Quinn Mathews, velocity's back up. He was 95 in 2024 when he broke out. Last year, he was back down to 93. And then so far, again, spring training, but 95 this spring. So we've seen some good things from Quinn Mathews. And honestly, like that Cards rotation, while it's hypothetically full, like I'm not sure there's a lot of good in it. I mean, you've got Liberatore. I don't think Dustin May can last. You're going to see Richard Fitz in there, but like, I don't know. I don't think it's crazy to see Mathews get in there early and run with some innings. And then Hagen Smith, I have no idea. I've seen Hagen Smith pitch several times. Like I saw him right out of the gate when he got drafted. I've seen him in the spring, saw him again some last year. And it's like, he's kind of all over the board with what you get of him. And I don't know. They've kind of hit him a little bit this spring. He's only thrown like 1.2 innings, but the word from the camp, like within campus, that they're pretty happy with where he's at and what he's doing. And then it's another case where like, if he comes up in the second half, like you get him at that point of the draft, it's like, even if he gives you like 40 to 50 major league innings, like they could be valuable. So I think at that point, you just kind of throw a dart at some upside and hope for the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is where things start getting a little painful for me. You grab Sam Antonacci of the White Sox at pick 630. Definitely had him circled a couple rounds later. Obviously, my mistake. And then Jack Wenninger, 660. Really wanted Antonacci, really wanted Wenninger, but when you're talking about the 42nd, 44th round, I mean, you can only blame yourself. But Chris, seeing Antonacci in the fall league and then again this spring, and I just think this guy's gonna hit. Like I used to be kind of deterred a little bit by the depth chart, just because it seems like the White Sox have like an endless amount of second base caliber guys. But the more I see Antonacci, the more I just think he's going to find a way to play. And it's kind of a potentially fantasy friendly profile, especially if like these recent power gains are real. Like could be kind of like a Luke Keyshaw type of profile maybe. And Wenninger, again, like just every time I watch this guy, I'm just like get more and more excited. So what do you think about Antonacci and Wenninger?
Yeah, Antonacci's one where it was definitely jumped the ADP, but I really like the corner and middle infield eligibility that he had. So he's second and third base eligible right now. And I wanted to just get some more depth there. And again, as he's just performed all spring, you're right. Like he's blocked. Like there's no doubt in my mind. You look at the depth chart, it's like, okay, like, well, where does he fit in this puzzle? And that's a good question. But I do think that he's going to find a way because he can play multiple spots. I'm not sure anything's assured there. I mean, yes, Chase Mydroth was solid in his debut. Like he showed some good things. He's certainly going to be on the roster to start. Miguel Vargas made a jump last year. I've got Colson at shortstop. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of with you, but I think that he just works his way into a role eventually. And I think the profile is becoming more and more attractive as I've seen him more and more. Seeing him in 2024 when he was with Kannapolis to then he spent a lot of time with Winston-Salem, another team around me. So I saw him a decent bit last year and it just felt like he got better and better and better. And then the fall league, as you mentioned, to the spring, it's just the gains are notable with him. And Wenninger, I mean, golly, he looks like he is the next Met to kind of take that leap of I mean, he's looking like a surefire top 100 prospect to me. I think he'll easily be in my top 100 when I'm updating. The stuff's good. And you can say, oh, he's walked a lot of guys. Well, I don't care. 6 innings. He hasn't had a track record of doing that historically. And he's built up innings. I mean, he seems like it is another one where you look at the depth chart and you're like, okay, like it looks full. But again, like after Peralta, Nolan McLean, and then I think Jonah Tong's going to take a spot, but it's like, okay, I mean, like, is David Peterson really going to block him? Is Sean Manaea going to stay healthy and block him? Is Kodai Senga going to be any good? I don't know. Wenninger might be the 4th best guy in the Mets org right now. And it's not like there's no reason that they would keep him down, in my opinion. I mean, he's not on the Rule 5, but I mean, this is a team that wants to compete and he might be one of their better arms. And I don't know. I'm pretty enthralled with what he can do. And I think he's like a super great draft and hold target.
Yeah. Yep. I got him in my last NFBC one, but didn't move fast enough in this one. And I think his 2026, Wenninger's 2026, could look a lot like Nolan McLean's 2025.
Yeah.
Just in terms of amount of time spent in the majors. And like you dominate the way he did in the like AA playoffs last year. I mean, I'm sure they don't think he needs much time at AAA. It's just kind of a question of when he fits into the mix there. So before we move to my team, Chris, any regrets or anything you want to hit or just thoughts on your draft before we move on?
I mean, maybe catcher and shortstop, like those could end up being the detriment to this kind of team, just not knowing what you get. The Seager pick, I felt like I backed up okay. Like Ha-Seong Kim in the 31st round, like you just kind of hope Seager's healthy early on, and Kim could be back in May, and I think I'd be okay there. And then obviously, like who'd I get late? Gabriel Arias with the Guardians. Like he's shortstop eligible, and he feels like he's gonna play every day in Cleveland, at least out of the gate. So I hope I backed it up okay if Seager does get hurt to at least get plate appearances. And then catchers, like who knows how it shakes. I feel pretty good about Moreno, but after that, it's a question mark. But yeah, I like the team overall. It'll be interesting to see, like, do I have enough power and do I have enough speed? And those will be the interesting things to kind of watch. But yeah, I mean, I like the team overall. Certainly have a couple of regrets like that I mentioned.
So I've got for those watching on YouTube, I've got the board back up to the top now. So my team picking second, starting Aaron Judge, Zach Neto, as discussed earlier. And then I grabbed Mason Miller. Same reason Clegg grabbed Edwin Diaz, just not sure who's going to make it back. If I had passed on Miller, I'm probably taking Aroldis Chapman in the 4th round or at least the 5th round. So, Miller 3rd round versus Chapman 4th, 5th round. It kind of explains the move there. I felt pretty fortunate. I didn't take a starting pitcher until the 5th round, and I felt pretty fortunate to get DeGrom and Uri Perez, given how long I waited there. DeGrom was definitely the guy I hoped would be there after I took Langoliers. I could not let you get Langoliers at pick 60, so I rolled the dice on that. But yeah, I mean, the pitching, like I said, I feel like I'm just a little bit behind you because, you start Brown and then you go Webb and just safer. Brown, Webb, safer than DeGrom, Perez. And then I mentioned, like, you sniped me with Sheehan there, but I do think, at least for my staff, maybe Sonny Gray fits even better than Sheehan, just because, like, you've got Brown and Webb, so you've got those sort of locked in 180 innings apiece, and it's easier to throw in, Sheehan's 150 innings, whereas, I might be getting 150 from DeGrom and Perez already, so maybe Sonny Gray actually leads my team in innings. So I felt okay about the way that the top of the staff turned out, given how long I waited there.
Yeah, I mean, that looks good. I think you did a good job with, obviously getting potential for, 2 aces with DeGrom and Uri Perez, depending on how that shakes. And then I thought the Sonny Gray pick was good. I'm a big Sonny Gray fan too. So, and Cavalli, I really like that pick, getting him in that rotation could be a big breakout for him. And man, Christian Scott was one I wanted. So got him. I really like that pick as well. So your rotation looks pretty solid, I think.
Yeah, I mean, decent timing with when I got Cavalli and Scott. I think they went out and shoved shortly after those picks. I get Alejandro Kirk at pick 149 as my second catcher. That felt good, except that I basically had him just slightly ahead of some other catchers who then waited a couple more rounds. So like it felt like sort of the Aranda pick where I just jumped in on a tier a little bit early, although I'm sure maybe you grab Kirk then if I don't grab him. But I thought Moreno in the 13th better than Kirk in the 10th, similarly to how I felt Sal Stewart in the 15th better than Aranda in the 12th. But I still, I'm not complaining about having two really solid catchers there. Let's see here. Riley Green, Matt Chapman, Sonny Gray, Bryson Stott, just kind of boring but necessary foundational picks there just for the everyday playing time, the counting stats. Stott at second base. Like I knew I was probably going to get Stott at second base once Gleyber Torres was gone. Gleyber rates very well in the OBP format at second base this year, but didn't mind ending up with Bryson Stott there. And Jose Caballero, I took at pick 152, probably a reach, maybe by a round or two, but no regrets on that pick. Definitely sort of a foundational piece I try to get on my draft and hold teams just for the elite versatility there. And just the stolen bases. Like I just love the way that he pairs with Aaron Judge. So Caballero in the 11th round. So Chris, I don't feel like I'm high on Colton Cowser, but I guess I kind of am since I got him in Tout Wars now. And then I also got him in the AL labor auction. Where are you at on Cowser for 2026? Like, do you think he's priced appropriately or undervalued, overvalued?
Maybe a little undervalued. I thought that was a good value spot for him. And it's certainly a spot where I was beginning to consider him. At that point, the only reason I had 3 outfielders, I think at that point. So he was kind of one of those where I would have liked to have him as my 4th outfielder rather than like a Ramon Laureano type. So I think that was pretty good value on him. It seems like that people are become pretty low on him, which is interesting. But again, he's still fairly young. I still think he's kind of coming into his own. Obviously didn't play a full season last year. The numbers were down, but again, I mean, you got 16 homers and 14 steals out of him in 360 plate appearances. I kind of think that he comes back stronger this year. We see the OBP kind of go back up, average as well, and the counting stats are there. So, no, I think that's a great spot for him personally, and I would have been happy getting him around there as well. So I think he's kind of becoming a tad undervalued.
All right. Well, love to hear that. Hoping for a Colton Cowser bounce back season. I think sneaky thing with him is just how much he ran last year.
Right.
Because I think in some of these leagues, like AL labor, like everyone's pushing up speed like crazy. He 14 steals in 92 games, and he went 14 for 14. And he's got 1 steal this spring already. He could just steal 15 bases, and he's overperforming what the projection systems think he's going to do. But I think there's a chance Cowser steals 20 plus this year. Now, Chris, my relief pitching situation, we talked, you got Edwin Diaz and Ebner Uribe as your top 2. I waited a little bit longer on my second closer. I went Mason Miller, obviously in the 3rd. Then I grab Robert Suarez at pick 212, Grant Taylor at pick 299, and then Clayton Beeter at 389. Trying to basically get my saves there with those 4 reliever picks. And then I took another reliever late, Mason Montgomery with the Pirates, but essentially I'm trying to get all my saves for the most part out of those 4 guys. So what are your thoughts on how many saves I might end up getting out of Robert Suarez, Grant Taylor, and Clayton Beeter over the course of the season?
Yeah, the Brave situation is kind of interesting. It's weird to watch the ADP trends because Iglesias is kind of trending down and Suarez trending up. And obviously, I think Iglesias is going to get the first crack, but I think Suarez is going to get his saves too. I mean, they're giving him a substantial amount of money, and I understand that it's from the standpoint of Iglesias is, he's got 1 more year. Suarez slots in as the closer next year, but I think he's going to get the 9th inning at times and certainly give you some saves. Grant Taylor, man, I just played chicken with too long. He's somebody that I really like. And so I just kind of kept waiting. Obviously not assured saves, but is he the best pitcher in the bullpen? Probably. I think that he is
probably the best pitcher on the team.
Probably, yeah. So, I mean, they could throw him in a starter's role if they wanted to, and he could probably excel. I mean, obviously he would have to build up a lot, but I mean, he could get saves, no doubt in my mind. I think that it wouldn't shock me if Grant Taylor gets the closer role in mid-May and just kept it all year. So, that could be, it is the White Sox, so we have to be temper the expectations, I guess. But maybe 20 saves at peak for Grant Taylor if all goes well. I don't know if that's the expectation, but that could be the top. And who knows what kind of role they kind of execute him and put him out in. But Beater is another one where it feels like a pretty good spot, and that was really good value. I would say, just like looking at their depth chart of how that shakes. And people like Cole Henry a lot, but I mean, Cole Henry to me, like he just has never been healthy and he can't stay healthy. And last season was really the first that he's thrown. I maybe been the first that he eclipsed 50 innings in his career, which is kind of wild. But I'm not going to say they were good innings. I think that Beater kind of seems like the guy where he just might be it and again run with it, and he could get 20 plus 2. So I think you got some good values there. And even Suarez, like if Suarez is not getting saves at the bat or like right out of the gate, he's going to get good ratios, good strikeout numbers, all things that you want. Kind of like the Abner Uribe situation, I think, for me. So I like that as well. And so, man, if all pans out, then you're going to win the league in saves. I think you could be at the tops of that category. In worst case, I think you have some really good ratios and strikeout numbers from those guys, and you finish middle of the pack in saves, and you're still happy because the other spots, just given how you got the values on those saves.
Yeah, I think with Beater, like he's really good against righties. Like I think he will give up some runs against lefties this year, but he probably is the best arm in that pen. And then Grant Taylor, like it's just tough to say exactly how his usage unfolds throughout the year, but like it wouldn't be the craziest thing if the White Sox are sort of hanging around, within shouting distance of 500, and they, go from using Grant Taylor in like multi-inning role to all of a sudden he's the guy we trust the most, in these games we're trying to win in like June and July and stuff. So interested to see how the season shakes out with Grant Taylor, but also even more interested perhaps to see how his next season shakes out once he's fully stretched out. You mentioned you liked my Cavalli pick there, pick 359. I took a bunch of specs. Matthew Liberatore with the Cardinals has caught my eye this spring. I think he's adding, really refining his repertoire. I like Liberatore about as much as I ever have. And then Woods Richardson. Got my Kyron Modzinski and Justin Robleski shares per usual. My Jake Latz share at pick 452, Christian Scott at 482. Just some pitcher specs trying to hit on in that range. Grab Denzel Clark and Lane Thomas for some cheap outfield speed. And then grab Ryan Waldschmidt at pick 479 and Emmanuel Rodriguez at pick 539. And Kemp Alderman at 629. So 3 outfield prospects there. I thought Rodriguez of the Twins at pick 539. I really like that value, just given that it's an OBP league. And I look at the DH spot for the Twins, like same logic you were using with the with your pick of blanking. Who'd they get from the Blue Jays?
Roden.
Oh, yeah, your Roden pick. Like I'm looking at that depth chart of the Twins, and it's kind of obviously if they're at full strength in the outfield, maybe those guys aren't playing, but that DH spot seems to be wide open. So even if I'm just getting Rodriguez for like a couple months, I think that's pretty solid in an OBP league. But you mentioned that I sniped you on Waldschmidt there at pick 479.
Yeah, I mean, he was having a great spring. At that point, it was like he was becoming a clear target to me. And I think that, he's one that's going to get significant playing time soon. I don't think they're going to keep him down for too long, especially if he continues to hit like we've seen, last year into this spring, showing some really good things. Was hoping to get him. I thought the Rodriguez value was awesome as well. And another one where I shouldn't have let him last that long. He just kind of kept floating out there. It's like, man, like these are some really good values on these guys. And so like looking back at it, would I rather have Emmanuel Rodriguez over like Zach Cole, like in the 34th? Probably. So like I would have rather have done that and gotten Rodriguez, because I mean, if Rodriguez gets a shot, well, he's another one hasn't been healthy. Like when he gets on the field, like he's one of the better OBP threats in the minors, and there's power, like big time power, and some sneaky speed at points too. So he could be a really fun player and just run some like super hot stretches where he's really good. And even Alderman's another one where I begin to consider him again, where I was needing some, I wanted some kind of like late outfielders. And it was a spot where I was kind of began to consider him. And obviously you got him right there before I got Antonacci and Clifford. So I thought those were good spots as well for both those guys.
Man, I can't decide it. Would I rather have Alderman or Antonacci?
Yeah.
Man, probably Antonacci, but
Alderman he has a clearer path to playing time, probably. I know, again, it's a situation where there's like a lot of guys like this in the Marlins org, but again, like who is clearly better than him? And
right.
I don't know.
How long, like it's sort of like my hope is that it's just kind of clear that he needs to be playing by like June or July. But they do have guys ahead of him they'll probably want to just exhaust some looks at. Waldschmidt's just his hard hit data this spring has really been something. And I couldn't believe I saw like Lourdes Gurriel's trying to get ready for potentially opening day. Like I didn't really see him getting ready that quickly, but I think they give Alek Thomas a fair shot, and if he's hitting, there's still probably room for Waldschmidt. Like I don't think the Diamondbacks are just sort of like we have to play Pavin Smith and Carlos Santana every day this year. Agree that Waldschmidt will be up soon. Got my Jake Bauers and Andrew Monasterio shares to cover the third first base spot and third shortstop spot on my roster. Might have been reaches there, but once you kind of run out of shortstops you're willing to roster or first baseman you're willing to roster, like the options just look terrible. So didn't mind reaching on Bauers and Monasterio just to cover my bases. And then I also grabbed some late pitcher specs in Trevor McDonald of the Giants, Elmer Rodriguez of the Yankees, Shane Drohan of the Brewers at 659, and Tanner McDougal, 662, Ty Johnson of the Rays, 689. Shane Drohan, got to see him pitch. Actually got to see him and McDougal pitch when I was out in Arizona.
Nice.
And Drohan looked fantastic. Obviously the Brewers have just a ton of options in that rotation, and Kyle Harrison obviously is taken off. But what are your thoughts on those last pitcher specs I took, and specifically Drohan?
Yeah, Drohan's somebody that he's really caught my eye this spring. And he's somebody that I've seen a lot of because he was with Boston and in Greenville here with me for like almost a full season. So I've seen a good bit of Drohan over the years, and his comeback's been really, really fun to watch. So what do we expect out of him? I don't know, but like as I've watched him this spring and I've wrote him up several times, like there's some intrigue here. And again, like you mentioned, like the Brewers have a lot of guys, but I think he can kind of work his way and find some reps, even if it's in like a long relief role, like where he gets a couple innings at a time out of the bullpen. Like, man, there's certainly some intrigue with Drohan. So he's certainly somebody that I think has made a leap in my mind this spring. McDonald was a target. Like, I think that he's heavily underrated and like in just most circles in general, where he could certainly find his reps, I think, in that Giants rotation. So big fan of McDonald and what he brings to the table. Elmer, big spring. He's going to find the reps too. He was certainly somebody I was considering around that point. And let's see, you got Elmer. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had Elmer in the queue, and it was like him or Quinn. And so, there was a lot of kind of, spec closers go, or spec starters go around there. And I went back and forth. You took Elmer right after I took Quinn. And so, I think that's great value there. And then McDougal, I mean, I'll tell you, McDougal was the best surprise I saw in the minor league season last year, because I'd seen him in 2024 with Winston-Salem. And I was just going out to see Winston-Salem for like their bats. Like it was early in the season. And like they had obviously Braden Montgomery and Antonacci and some of those guys. And like, I didn't think much of McDougal pitching because I'd seen him and he was bad in 2024. And he was like, he came out pumping gas. Like he was throwing 100. And I think he threw 7 scoreless that day in Spartanburg. And I remember just walking away from like, he had this hammer curve. Like, I was like, man, this guy is a different arm. And that continued all year. And I know he kind of, he faltered down the stretch at the end of the year, but I don't really care about that. Like, I think some of it was probably just fatigue. Like it was a long season for him. he had gone to Double A at that point, and he was good in Double A too. So even with the kind of rough last 2 starts in Double A, and so like he's a guy that's going to be 23 soon. Obviously, somebody that I think could find a spot where the White Sox roster is interesting. It's like they've got a lot of just names, but how many of them are good names? Again, I don't see any of these guys really taking or blocking McDougal if the White Sox think, yeah, he's ready and we want to get him up. So I thought that was a good value too, and somebody that I was certainly looking at the end game there and thought she came out pretty good. And if, I could trade him for Hagen Smith, would I have done that? Maybe. And you took McDougal right after I took Hagen Smith. So those were pretty fun turns there, I think, in the 44th and 45th. For both of us, you had Drohan, I had Wenninger and Hagen Smith, and you got McDougal. So fun spots. And then Ty Johnson's been great all spring. They could push him quick if they wanted to, no doubt about that.
Yeah, another team with seemingly endless options for the rotation in Tampa Bay there. But yeah, I mean, once these guys sort of dominate Double A for a long stretch like that on the pitching side, you kind of just think that it could be whenever the team decides they're ready, they're ready. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. Hope that we have another fun battle this year, Chris.
Absolutely.
Before I let you go, we got the spring breakout coming up. I know everyone's getting excited. Any player or two that you're just most excited to see how they show in the spring breakout?
I think one of the bigger helium guys would be like a Kevin DeFrank with the Marlins. So obviously DSL guy last year. DSL arms aren't typically ones that we're watching, but he's one who has all the ingredients of being like a high-level starting pitcher. So now having DeFrank stateside will be a lot of fun. I think the Giants have a couple interesting guys in Josuar Gonzalez, who will be over. He was one of the best prospects in the DSL and one of the top signings. So last year's DSL class was awesome because I think a lot of the top dollar guys also perform on the field. So it's been kind of a while since we've seen that. But Gonzalez and then Luis Hernandez, like coming stateside, which is incredible. So he signed this January and is skipping the DSL altogether, already stateside. So those 3 guys I would say are going to be ones that I'm really going to watch closely is Kevin DeFrank with the Marlins, and then the 2 Giants guys, Josuar Gonzalez and Luis Hernandez. So those will be guys that'll be fun. I think could really, generate some hype or buzz if they do something in those games.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, Hernandez, especially with the Giants, like if he does something in these games, people are going to lose it. Do you think Gonzalez is also going to be on that ACL team, or are they going to bump him to single A and Hernandez? Like, are they going to have to be splitting shortstop work in the ACL?
That's a good question. I've heard speculate, and this was, before the announcement, but I had heard speculation that Hernandez would be at the complex and Josuar at single A. I don't know if that's what they still plan to do. This was several months ago and I'd heard that, and that'll be interesting to really see how those positions shake out. Because then again, like, how do you set them up in the field? And I know people don't really care a lot about that early, but I do think that matters. That kind of will tell us a lot of how they see him, at least early on, as to where they put them in the org and if they are on the same team. But I kind of lean towards Josuar is going to be at single A. So we'll see if that comes to fruition, but I think it would be a lot of fun to see both these guys push pretty aggressively, and how then do they respond.
Awesome stuff, Chris. You want to let people know where they can follow along with your work?
Sure. Yeah. All the work's at the dynastydugout.com. So any prospect dynasty related stuff like we're doing over there, we'll have some ranking updates this week. And man, everybody just begs and begs for rankings updates, but I kind of like to wait a little bit into spring training because the small samples don't really mean a lot, but we've got some decent samples and some more injury news that then affects rankings for dynasty, especially. So yeah, I'm kind of working on those updates and have been, so those will be out hopefully the end of this week, but I don't love doing this early, but I know people have dynasty drafts and that sort of stuff. So I do want to get those out for those people, but yeah, we're kind of covering all the bases there. And then, on Twitter at Chris Clegg, MILB. I don't spend as much time on there, post as much as I used to, but I'm still around. So, if you have any questions, the Discord is the best place to be for the Dynasty Dugout, and that's, you can hop in there. We chat prospects and ball all day long. So good spot to be. But yeah, thank you, James, for having me. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
Absolutely, Chris. I know you're a busy man, so really appreciate you taking the time. And thanks to everyone for listening to this week's RotoWire Prospect Podcast, brought to you by Fantrax.